Okay. We should be live. Hello, Mr. Goat.
Howdy, GM. Good mother. Mrs. Good mother. Miss Mother.
So I have a question, and I wanted to talk to you about this because it seems to be in the realm of feelings. And there's just so much I don't really get about feelings and emotions and how a lot of people can allow them to cloud their judgment and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about cowardice, like the inability to speak up, and how, like, what that is from. 'Cause I think I'm missing something when it comes to. I mean, we know that cancel culture is, run by crazy bitch feminists, and they're constantly telling, men to shut up and that they can't speak their mind and all the things. But I'm wondering if that is a symptom of learned helplessness, or if cowardice can be present without that.
Um. Ooh, interesting. So,
Yeah.
cowardice. You're almost like talking about two fairly broad top subjects
Right.
simultaneously. Um. So, cowardice would be looking at things like fear. There'd be
Mm-hmm.
quite a few influences: fear,
Right.
the level of agreeableness, um, people pleasing, dependency. So, there's different branches of exploration you could venture off into and try and what bring them together, get a sort of a rounded understanding of cowardice. You got lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, so belief in oneself, trust in yourself. If you can't trust in yourself, did I already say fear? That should obviously be a big one. If you're someone who's very fearful, maybe fear of rejection or fear of even just sticking your neck out there to be noticed, to be seen.
Right.
That's funny because as much as people crave attention, um, on the flip side, you'll have some people they might want attention, but they're afraid of actually being exposed because exposed is one thing to want attention, but then to be singled out, exposed in the light, like with everyone's eyes focused on you and things like that, it can make someone feel very vulnerable. Yeah.
Right.
So so that kind of brings up this idea of wanting it both ways. Um,
But I see that also as a form of cowardice. Like what you just described, feeling vulnerable. Oh my God, I don't want people to see me do stuff. It's like, that's a form
it's
of cowardice, right?
it's a it's different context.
Mm,
It depends not only like a situational context, but maybe like the frame of mind at the time and the um, the formation of the type of person you're dealing with, how much security they have in themselves,
right.
maybe how maybe neurotic they might be. They
Mm,
because like if you're talking about a borderline, they'll go through a lot of different emotions rapidly, throughout the day. So it's hard for a borderline to stay consistent or to stay to hold on to a particular feeling for very long, which is
mm,
why they can switch. It's switching. So they might be raging 1 second, and apparently for no real reason, suddenly now they're actually happy and treating you nice. And to you, this is like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like what just occurred?
mm.
I just see
Yeah.
what you saw was someone switching
Yeah.
on you.
What just happened?
You know?
I've seen that
uh,
before.
and that could be quite a fearful, an introverted type of fear because that person
Mm,
can't. They might have it. depends whether on how much self-awareness they got. So if they know that this is happening and that it's beyond their control, that can
Right.
cause them anxiety. So there can be a lot of air quotes, cowardice, because there can also be things like a fear or reluctance. Almost, they sound similar, but they're two different kind of negatives of wanting to take responsibility or ownership. So if the world is now pressing on you to say, time for you to grow up, time for you to take on some responsibility, time to be accountable, time to tell the truth, time to acknowledge some of this stuff, and this person, for a plethora of reasons, doesn't feel like they want to, or they're not able to, or they're simply reluctant and refuse to because they want to be a spoiled princess and don't see why they should,
Right.
then they're being cowardly.
Yeah.
It's at that point, it's almost like a byproduct. It's a secondary feature. It's not so much that the cowardice is the problem. I mean, you mentioned it already. It's more like it's the symptom of a bigger problem that's taking place.
Right. Well, because and that's the worst symptom of all, because that's actually the one symptom that keeps the garbage going. Like the dysfunction keeps it going because people are afraid to put their foot down and be like, no,
It's
sorry,
the
not doing this anymore.
It's the obvious. It's the where you see smoke, there's fire kind of thing. So the cowardice will show up. You'll see that as a smoke. But if you got rid of the cowardice, that doesn't necessarily get rid of the problem. It's just cluing you into a direction of further. It's kind of like if they thought they were being if you thought they were being cowardly, or they use that as a kind of excuse, a red herring. You try and hold them accountable, and they say, "Oh no, I can't," and you go, "Why not?" And you go, "Oh, I feel like I'm a bit of a coward." Then that's kind of giving you a red herring.
See, I'm not talking about the dysfunctional people that are doing the wrong things. I'm talking about the cowardice of the enablers. And I think if we got rid of the cowardice, it would stop the dysfunction. Because if you have enough of the enablers that are like, we're no longer pandering to your bullshit anymore, you're mentally ill, way of being, then that shit would stop.
I think generally, so what you're indicating there is you need to get through that symptomology of the cowardice and see what is fueling that coward. Where is it? What are they really trying to hide?
Or save. I mean, because I see a lot of these people, especially in my especially in my work environment and other corporations, that a lot of the cowardice stems from people trying to save their job because they've been threatened, or they're being threatened that if they don't, go along to get along, that they won't fucking work there anymore.
There is, I'm pretty sure I must have read it somewhere or something, or came across the information.
Yes, Sam, definitely the enablers and the bystanders, because there's a group of people that also just ignore the problem. They don't, and by doing nothing, they're enabling it.
So the cowardice is a reflection of the fragility of their situation. So the world, and not necessarily meaning like physical objective reality world, but I mean like the inner world of their head, their sense of security, but more importantly, their sense of stability is already quite fragile. It's already topsy-turvy. It's delicate. It doesn't take much for them to be in a spiraling mess of chaos, and their cowardice becomes a act of desperation. So they might not necessarily want to, depending how it expresses itself, they might not necessarily logically agree, and maybe can even see that what they're doing is cowardly. But when you factor in that their need for a security of that stability is so important, which it should be, then they're gonna have to do things. It's kind of like why a codependent might do criminal acts, even though they consider themselves law-abiding.
Right.
Now, they're not doing these criminal acts because they decided to have a career change, but it's to facilitate some other need, or to address some other need that they got having problems with.
Mm-hmm.
So then their integrity crumbles. They become less resilient. They're not going to be able to push back and take control of themselves. So they're kind of out of control as well. Yeah, so I'm not saying that their cowardly behavior is a justification or excuses. It's just the smoke, really, of a much bigger fire going on.
Well, from what I understand from learned helplessness, it is pretty much the outcome of such severe abuse where it totally removes the target's ability to help themselves. So that's why I'm thinking like this cowardice thing. Like the most disgusting thing for me to observe is cowardice. But if it is a result of the abuse and kind of a symptom of learned helplessness, I feel like I might be able to have more sympathy for these people.
Okay, so if you take it with the precondition that this person is being abused or traumatized in some way,
Right.
or maybe neglected, which is still technically a form of abuse, but
Right.
for whatever reason, they're not really brought up healthfully.
Right.
To some extent, like what your argument is correct. Like it's they're like stepping stones that lead to these different problems, and it's not necessarily there's multiple paths that can have the same kind of outcome.
Yeah.
So there isn't a formula as such. So when people haven't got that healthy esteem, particularly when it's in the realm of esteem, by their integrated in them, helping them out, and all this with their ego in check and actually doing its job properly,
Right.
then they're technically in the vulnerable category. They're in that fragile category.
How though? That's what I don't understand.
Well, then how? Because because when we talk about what defines vulnerability, to some extent, it's largely about poor boundaries. It means things can penetrate and affect them, and it's beyond their control. And likewise, they can kind of spill out, and the lines of definition are blurred. There's no parameters. There's no between the lines that they can adhere to. So there isn't a really their sense of self is wishy-washy. It's faded.
Then they wouldn't have a healthy ego.
No, and that's what I'm saying. So vulnerability, the connotations are that it comes, it's a big problem, because it causes havoc really in all sort of areas of life. And you can kind of be sympathetic in the sense of like, if you've got someone who's so disorientated, I mean, at this point, they're not even seeing reality with an accurate lens. They're seeing things in distortions. taking things out of context. They're
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
into fantasy world.
Yeah.
Then, as much as they might try and delude themselves into blissful happiness, it is
Mhm.
still frightening, especially if they're trying to acknowledge that there is a real world that's parallel or exists, because that highlights their inadequacies or deficiencies or where they struggle. And if you can't cope tied into your survival mechanism, your fear of life starts to um, be on the line. So I know, well, I'm throwing in a lot of kind of like lingo terminology, but they're all kind of interconnected. And the cowardless aspect characteristic isn't so. What I'm trying to explain is that it isn't so disconnected from all these other issues. And also could be another reason why it might be a bit hard to address it, because you've got this other stuff to consider as
Right.
well.
Right.
I mean, some people, like I said before, some people intentionally want to be cowardly like that.
Yeah.
Like fight, flight, the four Fs for facing threat to your survival. Fight and
Right.
flight, freedom
But
for.
but that's the thing. It's a false threat to your survival. That's
Yeah,
that's
but
the crux of this whole fucking
it's real.
situation.
But the thing
They're
is, real,
literally afraid of somebody who really can't do anything.
but
They
that's it.
just say they can.
But that's it. Um, but everyone else can see it, you know, but they can't, because particularly if you're using the what we know with survivalism or survivalistic minded people, they're stuck in the moment. So much
Right.
so, you know, every minute is crisis. So how can you get them to have an outside perspective of what's really going on? And
Mm.
they're not going to have any room to use logical cognition, because that will if you got a lion right in front of you, you don't have time to wonder what breed of lion it is, what age the lion is. You've got to make a snap decision. So, and it's a bad judgment, bad decision making. Um,
But it's not even a real lion. It's a little fucking alley
right.
cat.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that, and it just shows you how scared they are that boo to a goose, they think,
Right.
oh my, you know, you could yeah, it could be like not even a cat, it could be like just something, make some sort of creature, like a random thing, a shadow.
Yeah.
And they think, oh my god, it's a dragon. You know, the imagination just, it's just, they're so survivalistically wired that it's like, I don't even care what it is, just get the hell out of here, be a coward. And cowardness can in a way be
Yeah.
life-saving. Yeah.
Really?
Well, if you haven't, especially if you don't have the confidence in yourself to be able to defend or fight back, or you don't even know what you're dealing with, and so
Right.
fighting isn't really an option, what other
Right.
options do you have? You're going to have the choice of running away. And just
Mm.
sort of as a point of sort of contention, I'm not suggesting that flight is, someone who decides to choose the option of flight is a coward. Obviously, there are times when it is good to run. You know, if there was indeed a lion that was coming at you,
Like a real one.
a real one, you know, uh, no one will fault you for running as fast as you can. Run, Forrest, you know.
Right.
But,
Right.
you know, so I'm not trying to say that just because you have maybe shown signs that you've flown from a situation, that somehow you're a coward.
Yeah. I'm just trying to practice more tolerance, because I spend, I don't know, 100. I spend about 90. No, about 100. So about 60 hours a week. No, 45, 50 hours a week in this I don't know what we would call it, a blue pill culture, a normie culture, fucking corporation that's full of crazy bitches and all kinds of fucking dysfunction. And I feel my patience is running kind of thin with a lot of people.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of changes that have happened in this next 30 days. I mean, we had some bigwigs come in and give a speech and pretty much lay down the law, and
Yeah.
because holding women accountable in this organization has been hard for a lot of men. Like, there was a manager that was reprimanding one of his subordinates about something, and she fucking just walked away from him.
Yeah.
Like,
Get away with murder. Just to make
right.
it
I'm
more
like,
relatable.
that
So
is some disrespectful, entitled bullshit that,
yeah.
like, I'm glad I didn't see it, because I would have fucking publicly embarrassed her in front of fucking everybody, and I would have probably made her quit. But he let her get away with that shit. And it's like, there's a lot of these guys that are in this position that it's like they're looking at HR fucking calls to the HR, for harassment if
Yeah.
they try to tell these women to do their damn jobs. I'm like, ooh, let me at them. Let me at them.
Maybe earlier in the conversation I was throwing way too many tangents at possibilities. In a situation as you're describing,
Yeah.
it could be quite. You don't necessarily have to have a multitude of reasonings, but if this is, if you got someone who's struggling to understand what they're dealing with,
Right.
no fault of their own, the difficult person they're dealing with has disorders and whatever, failures anyway. So it's like trying to make sense of something that is not making sense.
Yeah.
So that leaves this vulnerable person unable to follow like any protocols. There's no kind of like what to do in this case of an event. Like, it was never taught to them
Right.
to handle
Right.
pitch, for example.
Because these are new problems.
Right.
These are new problems I think this company wasn't prepared for. That's why I was so happy to see, like, the upper echelons come in and set the standard. And so, like,
Right.
from here on out, here's the standard that everybody can be held accountable to.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that would ultimately that's what's going to help them, is to be able to give them the guidance and then the courage to be able
Yes.
to enact, to take,
Yes.
to conduct yourself accordingly or appropriately. But the way things are, and to make this relatable to most people, like, you see this, what GM is describing, you see it in places like family dynamics, when or your friends they're hooking up with someone, or they're hanging out with other people that you don't quite, you can see problems but they can't, and they're doing it, and you're just mystified why they're doing it.
Right.
Or I see it in the school,
Yeah.
like we're
It's everywhere.
describing getting away with murder.
Yes.
So there's plenty of arenas that this behavior, this human behavior interaction, plays out. But when we try and think of it from their point of view,
Mm-hmm.
that the person is also see, for you it's not so much of a mystery, because you've got experience of it, you've seen it over and over again. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not new information as such.
Right.
So your
Yeah.
processing speed in terms of thinking of
Yeah.
like, right, what do I need to do here,
Yeah.
is sharper or whatever. You're not
Yeah.
gonna get stagnant, or with you've got fight, flight,
Freeze up.
you're not gonna freeze up.
Yeah. Right.
So
I see
you'll see
that.
that as well. Flight and freeze will be pretty close. So
It's
probably
the
what will happen,
freeze.
they freeze at first because sensory information's coming in, and
Yeah.
it's like, Wooga, what the fuck am I dealing with here? I don't
Yeah.
know. This is some sort of strange situation. How am I
Mhm.
supposed to feel about this? What am I supposed to think about this? Let alone, what am I supposed to do about it? It's kind of, and it's particularly if it's a situation where it's like they need to do something. They need to respond quickly.
Yeah.
They can't ruminate, for example, or contemplate.
Mm-hmm.
So they freeze up. They're processing information. They might give, the lights are on, but no one's home, sort of thing. They don't know what to do with themselves.
Right.
And they need to, and it's kind of like being dropped into an alien environment or dropped into the deep end. So they need to gather themselves, orientate themselves, and what we'd likely see it happening is because you got me and them.
Mm-hmm.
So because I'm in such self-doubt, I don't know where I am, I don't know what's going on and all this,
Right.
and it's a puzzle that I can't solve here on my own, let me just help make them happy and satisfied and deal with that.
Right.
So
Right.
what is it they're barking at me about?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, let me off the hook. Give me what I want or whatever it is. Okay, fine. Make them happy.
Yeah.
People pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes at like sacrifice to yourself, because they might say, well, I want you to kneel before me, or bend the knee, or I want you to whatever, call me by my pronouns or whatever. So you go, oh, okay, that'll make you happy. That's what I'll do. All right, I'll address you with those pronouns. Right?
No.
They don't even know the ramifications of what they're doing. But
yeah, exactly. And the adults do, and the adults fucking concede to them anyway, like fucking cowards.
Yeah.
And it's like, I blame them. I blame the enablers the most. Like they're the fucking problem.
Almost
the enablers.
Touching on fawning here.
Yes.
Because it's like,
yes.
I'll give in and enable you as the giant monster that's about to devour me. Please don't eat.
Right.
So
when they're really just petulant little fucking spoiled children that really can't do anything except threaten.
It's the same kind of thing. Like the kids will be nagging, they want a ice cream or Nintendo or whatever, and the parent just reluctantly just like fine and gives in. You want your McDonald's? All right, here's a Happy Meal. Now leave me. So it is. You're not wrong, or you shouldn't feel bad to be saying like it's kind of like cowardly behavior.
Yes.
Some people might think that maybe that's a bit of a harsh way of putting it, or maybe there's a bit more to it than just simply being cowardly. But it is part of the package in a way or one of the features of this survival tool belt that is being developed over time. Because if they're giving into these petulant, childish, tyrannical,
emotional terrorism,
right? Then there will probably be other types of interactions they're having where they struggle with as well. So instead of, this is kind of the thing. So if you're not improving your self-esteem, you're doing your self-improvements, you're fortifying yourself, you're building your integrity and all this sort of stuff. What are you doing in its place? You're building a Batman utility belt of coping strategies.
Right, reactionary tools instead of proactive tools.
Right. Yeah. So it's like which wolf are you going to feed? Are you going to feel?
No. That's neither wolves.
Well, yeah, but that's more good. But it's a bad one. Yeah. Which are you going to?
Like the proactive is both wolves in different ways. The reactive is just
it's more of the choice of the easy versus hard. Really, it's like, do you want it easy, and just try and survive, or do you want it hard and actually, like, do you want it easy, like stay a child and have people look after you,
Exactly.
or
Exactly.
do you want to do it
It's a
hard
level
and
of
grow up
maturity. Yeah.
and maturity? Yeah. So
But with
in a
maturity,
way,
it's taking responsibility.
yeah. So in a kind of more deeper psychological way, it's not so much that they enable these toxic people um, because they're cowardly saying no to them.
Hmm.
It's more of a case that they're cowardly of having to grow up in themselves to be able to say no.
Right. I
So
mean,
if
part of,
you really wanted to help them, instead of, it's kind of like you would say to this person who's enabling toxic others,
yes.
and you wouldn't just say stop doing that.
Apparently, calling him a male feminist and pointing it out
Right.
doesn't work.
No, so you have to go deeper, and it's going to be more
Yeah.
painful and sensitive for them. You've got to say to them, like,
Great.
you need to stop treating yourself or wanting to be a child and uh, thinking you're back inside a womb and everything's going to be looked after, everything's going to be all soft and you're a baby and you've got this kind of
Get out of that warm, poopy diaper. Is that what you're saying?
yes, and and
Uh,
face the music, like face reality, face the truth. Yeah, obviously they're not going to want it, they're going to recoil, and that's probably not going to help. So you got to find a way of getting through to them where they acknowledge, where they twig, or the switches in their head flip in such a way that they decide, yeah, enough is enough. I've been lying to myself all this time.
yeah.
I've been bending the knee. I mean, that acknowledgement of honesty is already starting to take accountability. So it's a good sign
Right.
if they can be honest enough to acknowledge that, yeah, you're right. I have let people exploit me, or I have
Yeah.
um, done things that upset me, or whatever. They're taking stock and account. So there is hope there. They still got a
Yeah.
long way ahead, obviously, but
Yeah. If they just acknowledge that they've been bending the knee to crazy bitchery.
well, if they continue to double down in denial and like pretend they can't hear you and you're the one that's out of your mind and all this sort of stuff,
Right. Right.
then that's that kind of cowardness coming up to the surface as defense
Hmm.
to stop them seeing the ugly truth, or
Right.
to stop them seeing to face their fear, to look in the mirror,
Right.
you know.
Mm. Yeah.
But as
Somebody.
terms of, you mentioned learned helplessness.
Yes. Well, Sam Fisher said something interesting. Cowardice became the standard of men when the violence is never the answer mantra was turned into common belief through repetition and indoctrination. So, cowardice being a result of never confronting violence? I could see that actually.
No, but you do confront violence. You direct it inwards instead.
Yeah.
You become violent to your inner self.
Oh.
So instead of saying no to the crazy bitches or whoever, the abusers, the people taking
Hmm.
advantage, you say
Yeah.
no to yourself. You deny your reality, which is the reality, and you say, okay, I give in. You can have your fantasy. We'll call that the real world instead.
Hmm.
So I'll sacrifice my integrity, reality, who I believe the true, my sense of self.
Hmm.
And now I will participate in your fantasy. So if I'm now in a fantastical world, then I'm not a real person anymore. I'm part of that fantasy. I'm a fabrication.
Right.
So now I'm taking it in a bit of an esoterical, spiritual kind of sense. But um, I apologize. Follow along if if you get it.
Yeah. So violence is always the answer. You can't get rid of it. It needs to
Is
be external, and
it? They say in the Terminator, like it's like human. It's in human nature to want to destroy yourselves.
really.
Something like that. It's violence and destruction is in our nature.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's either you make that choice. It's either you stand up against a fantasy and say no to that, and
Mm-hmm.
that maybe they'll argue that, oh, you're being aggressive and violent, but
Yes.
you're being assertive. There
Yes.
are other words you could use.
Yeah.
But
I prefer assertive.
it becomes a question
Yeah.
of boundaries. So it's like draw
Yes.
the line. That out there is fantasy. We're not saying get rid of fantasy. We're just saying know your place. That it doesn't belong as a
Right.
substitute for reality. There are
Right.
times when it's nice to have a break from reality and entertain the ideas of fantasy. That's how we enjoy films, by disassociating from reality and projecting ourselves into the movie so that we can make it more relatable, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not trying to eradicate fantasy, but we're just trying to prevent it from trying to annihilate reality.
No, we need to keep fantasy out of the structures of our society. Obviously, that doesn't belong there.
Yeah, no. Well, it doesn't need to be substituting it or replacing it. There might
No.
be times when the creative side of fantasy can actually help structures in reality. It's like you say to the governing board, "Hey, we're trying some strategies here. Can anyone bring up any new strategies?" And so creativity, using some imagination, can help be like, "Hey, maybe we should have a, I don't know, whatever."
No,
Yeah,
because
we turn
if
into
it's fantasy, it's more like what could be instead of what works.
no,
If it works, then
it,
it's reality. If it doesn't work, and it's
it
supposed to work
well,
but doesn't, that's fantasy.
no, I'm talking in a sense of like you take inspiration from the fantasy and apply it in a realistic, pragmatic, practical kind of way. Um, it's a relationship, just like a lot of things. So it's
Mm.
understanding what serves what kind of functions, and the two should not mix.
Right.
At least not in that sense of one is no different than the other.
Right.
They can mix in terms of complementary,
Mm.
like coexisting. But so that means in a way that reality isn't really angry with fantasy if fantasy knew its place and
Right.
acted accordingly and was, by the rules kind of thing.
Exactly.
But fantasy, inside the fantasy world,
Hmm.
it doesn't like reality because it's kind of dependent on reality.
Right.
So that's where the invasion is coming from. It's not reality trying to be a party pooper and deny fantasy having its space or its purpose, but it's now trespassing in areas it don't belong.
Right.
And that's where that's where people are getting the rub from or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where it's abrasive to a coexistence. Now fantasy wants to, because it's almost like the fantasy is the child and the reality is
Yep.
the grown
The
up,
adult. Yeah.
and that there's a relationship there. So the child wants to just let loose and expand, but the
Yep.
parent has to kind of be like, no, you're like, we're gonna be a bit of a party pooper or whatever, but it's not
Yep.
because we
It's your
hate you.
bedtime.
It's for you, right? You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why.
And sometimes as grown-ups, it's good to have that kind of childishness or childness, like you otherwise you wouldn't really play football with your kid or anything like that. So, but you don't forget, you have presence of mind. You realize, no, even though I might say something a bit childish and be like a bit of trolling or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, will make these kind of funny jokes or something, you still, at the end of the day, you remember that you're a grown up, you know.
See,
So
Sam's got it.
Venom's will cease to exist when men stop submitting to government abuse.
Yep. And that's in every structure of our society. You know what's weird? All the people that I actually get along with the best at work, they're all dads. They're all like the based, like rational thinking
Oh,
ones.
that's need
But
to be.
but also on the flip side of that, they have more at stake. You know, they have families to take care of, so they can't always be open with their words, which sucks because it's like if I just remove all the crazy bitches, they can sort out the organization properly.
Yeah. Well, they have to be careful. You maybe I don't know if this is just like my prerogative or
Right.
a dad's general kind of viewpoint, or if it's a men's sort of general viewpoint. But
Hmm.
um, you've got principles, you've got structures of belief,
Mm.
you've got code of conduct, all
Yeah.
these, all this sort of ethos stuff, and then with the relations you have, especially when it comes to like children, your family, or people you care about, you don't. The spirit of man isn't as aggressive and violent as it and destructive as it can be. It's not
Right.
malicious. It doesn't
Right.
do it because it wants to be an asshole or evil. It sometimes it's like a bit of a necessity.
Right.
Uh, but where we can, there is a spirit, there is a heart there. We do actually care. There is a compassion component to it.
Yeah.
Because when you're angry, especially like in terms of a malicious sort of form of anger, that is soul consuming,
Mm.
you know. So just as much as maybe you have to be violent to someone and hurt them, but there's a little bit that inside you that also gets hurt when you do that.
Right.
Ask any red pill rager how much they're angry with themselves, as much as they angry with everyone else in the world and then the injustices, but how much they're angry with themselves. After like let them have their episode first of all, catch them in the aftermath and say, right, do you feel any better? They probably feel a little bit ashamed of themselves for what
Yeah.
they were conducting. So there's a bit of inner hate that's in there in the cocktail mix of feelings. But
That's what I remember my dad saying. And, like he had to dish out a spanking. He was like, "Yeah, this is gonna hurt me more than it hurts you." He was actually being honest about that. Like it broke his heart to
yeah,
spank.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Personally, I've had a few. When me and the kid went our separate ways, breaking up the family was one of those times
Yeah.
where I have to, you know. And she doesn't. I know my kid doesn't hold it against me, but she could very easily be like, "This is your fault, Dad," or something like that, or
Right.
I feel, or she misses her the extended fact, her cousins, uncle, aunts, grandmother, and things like that, and they're not here because we've gone no contact. And but yeah, I feel responsible for it.
Yeah. Well, because you ultimately made that choice.
Yeah,
So it is your responsibility. But
it
you
was
shouldn't feel
is
ashamed of it because it's
it
for the
wasn't.
better.
Well, I took no pleasure from it. It's not like I
Yeah.
was like, even though people might after be like, oh, I feel so much more free and life is so much more happy and less stress. It's
Right.
like, and it's true, but um, there's no pride or pleasure in having to. It just, as a dad, you have to do what needs to be done, um, no matter how painful it might be, you know. And as a trait of leadership is you put yourself aside for the need and of others. You have to do what's right. Can't remember how we got to this point in the conversation, but we were talking about cowardice before.
Cowardice, yes.
Fantasy and reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there is to be a pushback, and people, see, when you say like people asserting themselves, it sounds like they're trying to dominate and take something that they're doing something that they shouldn't be. But
People just have a hard time saying no to bad behavior at work. It's fucking weird. It's super weird. It's like all these girls go around and do whatever the fuck they want, and
There is
nobody
this-
says anything to them except me.
there is this small thing I heard as
Yeah.
as an explanation,
Yeah.
where it goes something like this, where they say the reason why people won't say no to someone else is because they themselves don't want to be told no.
Mm.
So I will grant you to, the ability to do whatever you like, even though it might be twisted and demented.
Mhm.
I'll let you have your fun. I won't say no to you because I wouldn't want someone to say to stop me being like this. So it's kind of like they want to be feeble. They want to be little lambs, or they like however they rationalize their existence, even though it's not very helpful or healthy for them.
Mhm.
This is the kind of the structure has provided a pseudo form of stability, because they look around themselves, even though everything is not really how it should be, but they're like, well, I'm surviving. I might be a weak little kitten or a little sheep, or I might be. I don't like these. I'm questioning this idea of the jab, but I'll do it anyway. And I'm still alive for now. Okay, they can carry on changing the world around me, and I'll just be complicit and comply with it without question, and hopefully I'll get through life spared.
Yeah.
Yes,
See, I like being told no. Like, especially at work. I'll be like, hey, I want to do this thing. And they're like, no. And I'm like, that's the perfect opportunity to find out why I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm always like, why? And they try to explain, and it makes no fucking sense, because I have really good ideas. And it's like, it's always something weird, like, because because you're not supposed to. Said who? Like, I try to get to, the person that doesn't want you to do the, thing that would make the most sense in that situation. Like, like critical thinking, like, doesn't exist. And it's like, when I'm told no, I'm like, why? I want to know why. Because in my mind, it's a great idea and it would fix this problem that you tend to have, but why can't you fix it exactly? And it always goes down to because some crazy bitch like doesn't want you to or something. I'm like, I don't give a shit what crazy bitches want. Like, this needs to happen.
It's almost like, because as much as the crazy bitch is a headache,
Yeah.
if we gave you a honest, truthful answer, having to address that is even more of a headache.
Yeah. I like to address it though.
Yeah.
I want to talk to the crazy bitch.
They make a choice, like, so which is the lesser of perceived two evils?
Right.
One is actually evil, and the other is
Yeah.
is actually it's caring, really.
Yeah.
As like
Contriver.
kids
I
don't-
see you backstage. You're
kids don't want
interrupting.
to grow up, but it's great having him here. Hey, Contriver, good seeing you,
Hey,
man.
Contriver.
I was interrupting, but for a solution, actually, we already know. Okay, so
Yeah.
yes.
Here,
so
this will be the perfect time for me to take a potty break.
Okay,
I'm still listening.
yes.
Okay.
So I actually wanted to show something. Well, I could. Have you seen Sir Humphrey Appleby, Mr. Billy? Hello.
I don't think so. Maybe is this? I don't think I have, but if you're
Well,
showing a
these
video,
are, well, this is Paul
Humphrey
Eddington,
Appleby.
Paul Eddington, Nigel Hawthorne from the 80s classic. Yes, Minister, and yes, Prime Minister.
All right.
So this is yes, Minister, and open government. So yes, just a second, just a second.
Or I could try resorting that out. I'll just shout out to the people in the chat. Hope everyone's all right.
Yes. So am I audible clearly?
Yeah. I can hear
Okay.
you.
No. This is not actually my microphone present. So share screen and entire screen, share system audio, select and then share. Okay. So now I'm sharing my screen. Okay. So this is it. Are you able to see that?
Yeah, that's all right.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you?
Just
hear
a
me?
second. Yes, I can. Now,
Okay, good.
watch this sort of exchange of civil servants.
How's your new minister, Humphrey?
Learning the rules very quickly for a new boy. How's your new cabinet?
No problem. You can hardly tell the difference from the last one.
Arnold, I hear the American ambassador has been spending a lot of time with the PM these last few days.
Yes,
Defense or trade?
both.
The aerospace systems contract?
Don't want the cat.
This aerospace thing would be rather a coup, can't it?
Yes, of course, it's been of the month. The new PM will take the credit.
So,
Sorry to intrude, Sir Arnold, Sir Humphrey, if you could just okay the redraft of the Minister's winding up speech, I can get it straight down to the House.
yes, of course. Would you like to join us?
Oh, thank you, Sir Humphrey. As long as I'm not too long.
Get yourself a cup of coffee. So it would be rather an embarrassment, PM, wouldn't it, if a hypothetical minister were to rock the Anglo-American boat?
Grave embarrassment.
How grave?
Man overboard, I should think.
Enough to cut short a promising new ministerial career.
No question.
We'll have a chair, Bernard.
Yes.
And tell us what you think of our new minister.
Well, absolutely fine.
Yes. We'll have him house-trained in no time. Swallowed the whole diary in one gulp, and I gather he did his boxes like a lamb last Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, he did.
As long as we can head him off this open government nonsense.
But I thought we were calling the white paper open government.
Yes, well,
Always dispose of the difficult bit in the title. Does less harm there than in the text.
the law of inverse relevance. The less you intend to do about something, the more you have to keep talking about it.
But what's wrong with open government? I mean, why shouldn't the public know more about what's going on?
Are you serious?
Well, yes, sir. I mean, it is the minister's policy, after all.
My dear boy, it's a contradiction in terms. You can be open, or you can have government.
But surely the citizens of a democracy have a right to know.
No, They have a right to be ignorant. Knowledge only means complicity and guilt. Ignorance has a certain dignity.
But if the minister wants open government,
You don't just give people what they want if it's not good for you. Do you give brandy to an alcoholic?
If people don't know what you're doing, they don't know what you're doing wrong.
well, I'm sorry, Sir Humphrey. I am the minister's private secretary, and if that's what he wants,
My
then...
dear fellow, you will not be serving the minister by helping him to make a fool of himself. Look at the ministers we've had. Every one of them would have been a laughingstock in 3 months had it not been for the most rigid and impenetrable secrecy about what they were up to.
What are you supposed to do?
Can you keep a secret? So can I.
Well, this is to showcase as to what is called as the word government.
Yeah, the gambit.
Yes. Okay, so am I audible now? And good mother also came back.
Yeah, there is an element of you got present clashing with the foreseeable future. So the future takes more precedence over the importance of the here and now.
Hi, Frank. By the way.
When you got a situation where you've got like a crazy bitch wanting something, instead
Yes.
of doing that as an isolated incident of like, right, oh, we'll deal with this right now,
Yeah.
the constipation of taking action comes from worrying about what this is going to lead to. It's the fear of the future, or fear of the unknown, that is stopping the appropriate action right now that is required.
Right.
There's feedback going on.
What is going on? Okay, let's see if that worked. Okay, Contriver, I've removed your thing. It was making
He was
an echo.
muted. He's muted.
I know, but he had it presenting, but in the background.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and that's what's so weird about when they tell me no about fixing a problem. It's like, you have no problem saying no to me when it's a good thing. And that's going to actually solve a fucking problem. When it's an actual solution. Why? Why is it okay, and why do you feel comfortable saying no to solutions
Because
versus
saying no to your suggestion
yeah.
isn't a problem when they think about the future of your suggestion. I mean, they might really, if they were being logical, they'd be like, there might be actually, this is a good thing, you know, like there might be something positive. So it's not, but it's not, but that's by the by. They're more interested in where is there going to be a problem in the future.
Right, because the reason why it's that way to begin with is because a crazy bitch got involved. And now I'm changing crazy bitch's contribution to the company. I'm recorrecting things. And I keep getting no's. I mean, I do the shit anyway because I win the little debate or whatnot. And
quite often, oh, he dropped out. Maybe he'll return. And quite often, I think they believe that, well, if I can just give in to the crazy bitch, then I could avert the chasmicalistic outcome of the future.
Yeah.
Which
is stupid because they're actually causing it.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Now, if you wanted to be a bit more assertive, I'm not suggesting this is something you would do.
I don't think I can, Billy.
But
I'm pretty assertive.
It would be interpreted as a bit of a veiled threat. But if you were like, look, here's my suggestion, and if you're going to say no to me watch out, because whatever X, Y, and Z is gonna like, I'm gonna take this to management. Now you become more of a danger, and they'll be like, all right, now I have to actually address you properly and
No, see, I don't like to play the stupid
no,
games.
it is a stupid game, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like just as bad as
Yeah. No.
I'm just saying that
Yeah,
that is one of the options you could choose, but
I mean,
that's not what you would be doing.
that's a card that I can definitely play later on down the road if what I'm doing now doesn't work. It's definitely a card I can play.
not
I can
one
play all the group identity bullshit I want,
well, yeah,
but I don't have to yet.
no, and that's that is a separate like lesson in of itself. Like, just because something is an option or available doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to do it
Right.
or take it. So even if you said this a card you might play later on, like
Yeah.
don't. If you can refrain from doing it, don't, because that
Yeah.
demonstrates a higher level of character resilience and and
Yeah.
all this other good stuff that other people don't. They don't have they don't possess that sort of traits,
Right.
or quality of a person.
I don't think I'll ever have to, but just in case all else fails and I have the entire weight of the crazy bitches and the entire company against me, I will pull the Schrodinger's feminist and play the victim. I don't think I'll have to do it, but I will
No.
play that group identity fucking victim Olympics.
I don't think that would. Most likely that would make you feel a little bit. Made me feel a bit ashamed
Dirty.
of yourself for having
Yeah.
to stoop low or play dirty like that.
Well, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it's the game that they already created. That's how you win the prizes. And I know how to play it. But I
Yeah.
don't think I have to
Well,
win.
it's far better when they punch themselves in the face than
Oh yeah. Yeah.
taking their hand and punching them with it. You do it.
Right. Well, they go to punch at me and then they end up punching themselves, which is
Right,
strange.
yeah,
It always backfires.
And just
It's-
as a little anecdotal observation,
Mm.
just as much as you playing that card of desperation, stupid to that level is
Yeah.
an option, and probably like the very last option you would ever dream of going to.
Yeah.
For the other team, that's the first choice.
I
They go
know,
straight for it.
because
Yeah.
they know no other way to play the game.
Oh no, they know it, but they don't. They are reluctant.
They're incompetent. They can't.
But they know that there are other ways of being or conducting yourself, but for whatever
No.
kind of reason, they're
They
not gonna do
hate they hate those ways, Billy, because they're not qualified to participate under those circumstances. And they
No,
know it.
right. And like a more mature person would be like, oh, I might not be qualified or have the skills to do it, so I will learn, I will invest, I will train, or whatever,
Mhm.
so that I can. But
Yep.
they're not interested in that. And if they are going to hate that approach,
Yeah.
and if you're demonstrating that that's what you can do, it's not out of the realms of impossibility.
Right.
Like other people seem to manage to like toe the line, so they can't use the ignorance excuse. Like I didn't even, it didn't even occur to me to be by the book or something like that.
Right.
So they are aware of it, but
Mhm.
it's almost like they're allergic to it.
Yes.
So
Because
when
they're incompetent. They're not qualified to even
but they're
compete on that level.
they're incompetent because they choose to take on that responsibility.
Right.
They chose not to grow up. They chose not to be responsible or be accountable.
Yeah.
It's a complete rejection.
Yeah.
I'm going to be making a big hoo-ha about rejection being a key word when understanding this crazy landscape
Mhm.
go on, because that is a key feature of how to when you can't navigate and integrate into a realistic world, normal
Mhm.
society with normal norms and all this, everything above board and and being true and authentic and honest about things. And instead you're trying to bring this kind of fantasy substitute into existence.
Yeah.
You have to reject reality. You have to jettison it. You can't just simply ignore reality. It has to be eliminated, eradicated. It has to be completely out of the picture to give space for this ever-growing ego of theirs.
Right.
For the two of us, one has to go, and it sure as hell ain't going to be their fantasy. So reality has to go. And how else can I say that rejection is a crucial aspect of this mechanism to happen? Is because it happened to them in the very beginning, where they rejected having to be the true authentic self,
Right.
and in its place they substituted it with the false self. So who they are and the world, the two are one. They are the world. That's why they don't see us as people. We don't exist. That's all in their
Right.
they're in their own head, their own megalomaniacs. So the two, the one, the sense of self and the world are conjoined. They are the one and the same. So if you reject the self, the true self, if you reject what's true about you, honesty in that, you automatically reject reality. And so when it comes to like options available, realistic options available, those are tied to reality. They must be rejected automatically without even any consideration.
And what I'm working on is by rejecting reality, that means they go their own way from reality. I'm working on getting the crazy bitches out of this organization. They can reject it all they want, but they have to remove themselves.
That's the problem.
Because eventually they will be removed.
And they try and make it seem like we're the ones with this problem.
Right.
It's a problem for them, because reality can exist independently of fantasy. It might be dull and boring and not very creative,
but it will survive.
But the real world will exist regardless of what we think or care about it. Truth doesn't need to defend itself.
Right.
But for fantasy to exist, it is conjoined. It requires a basis of reality to make the fantasy functionable.
Yeah.
So the fantasy is supported with props of reality. The reality is the substructure to the fantasy. The reality gives liberty to the fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's also another reason why, in a way, like, that which is true isn't being malicious about it.
Right.
It's actually being quite generous.
Very generous.
The freedom to play around, to be juvenile. The problem is that fantasy has got a bit too big for its britches.
Oh yeah.
It can exist independently of reality.
Right. So go exist away from the structures that reality built.
Right, but it doesn't do so by being original in a way and creating its own reality separate. It does it by hijacking in a way. It's
parasitic.
It's used reality to structure the world. Now that it's done so, or to what extent, to form this, fantasies come along and go, right, they're trying to reject reality, get off this planet. We're going to steal the world that you've created, and we're going to say that we made it instead.
Right. Yes.
And even if they were successful, that new claimed territory of theirs, which doesn't belong to them really, they'll left it up. They won't. So they're dependent. Fantasy is dependent on reality. It needs, as much as it hates reality, it's like tough tits. Like, reality has to be there, present. Otherwise, you can't look after yourself. So like toughen up, buttercup, or whatever. It's like people who are being in their fantasies, in their fifis, the crazy feminists, the childish people.
Yeah.
This is the rock and the hard place. It's like the best you could hope for is to coexist, and that means have some fairness about you. You're gonna have to have some limitations put on you, whether you like it or not, for your own
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, fend for yourself. See how far that gets
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. Well, it's like the feminists. They complain about the patriarchy, yet if it wasn't for the patriarchy, the crazy bitches wouldn't be alive. Like
Yeah.
they give no credit to any of the men that, you know, are responsible
it's a-
for keeping everything going.
It's an automatic rejection, because to give
Yeah.
them credit acknowledges that they exist. And if there's two, if you got they and me, then who am I? I don't know. You know, so they're trying to be that with like a god complex, the only
Yes.
source of
Yeah.
it of being that's in existence.
Right.
They are the everything.
Right. It's that
They
superiority
can't be
bullshit.
that if they have to acknowledge other people.
Which is weird because they require submission and slaves, right?
Yeah, but they don't require people.
Right.
That's the thing. That's
Mm.
why we're vendors, we're dispensers. We just provide fuel or we're supply sources. We're not actually people, because if we were people, that reveals the imperfections of the fantasy. It means that there are things outside of your control,
Mhm.
and that's a huge problem for them.
Which I kind of see as a projection, because I don't think feminists are people. So when they say, "Oh, you're not people," they're really talking about how little they think of themselves, really.
Well, yeah, because people is a group term. A singular is called a person.
Person.
So, and that they're not, because with everything how it's going, when you factor in all these talks and conversations, they and the world are one and the same. They are the center of the world. They are the center of the universe. They are the higher than God himself. Like they are the bringer of life and the creator of death. I mean, the bringer of death and the creator of life. This isn't a person.
Right.
This is some kind of beyond.
Yeah.
You know, which is
Well, that's part of the
not-
feminist lie, how they indoctrinate young women into believing that they're superior.
right.
Like goddess, queen, blah blah blah,
How do you-
all
how
the
do you
terms.
So how do you get them to start believing that kind of stuff? You begin by rejecting who you actually are.
Mm.
Because if I said to you, like GM, you
Mhm.
are the some sort of really extreme title. Let's say you're the queen of the continent or something like that. You turn around and be like, "Shut up, Billy! You're being stupid."
Right.
I know I'm not. You basically turn around and say to me, "I know I'm not what you say I am." But if I can get you to reject your sense of who you think you are,
Hmm.
now you're vulnerable to be impressionable. Now I can basically dictate to you and say, not just say that you're the queen of whatever continent, but I could also say something like, you've got Superman powers or something. You can fly.
Right.
You
Right.
might actually believe it at this point, or you're an alien. Let's say you're an alien that you dropped it, or something,
Right.
whatever. Or
Right.
a lot of these conspiracy theories, for example,
Mm.
they can start gaining gravity and weight because there's nothing to say otherwise.
Right.
And especially if not only has the otherwise been rejected, but should you even dare think about it, you'll be conditioned to look at it with disgust and shame.
Right.
So not only do these feminists reject who they truly are,
Yeah.
like incompetent, incapable, desperate, cowardly,
Pathetic fucking
all this
parasites.
But
Yeah.
should they even dare attempt to face reality and come
Mhm.
to grips with having to take some responsibility for the first time ever
Yeah.
and acknowledge that, whoa, there's another aspect, like the true authentic self there,
Hmm.
it's they would not want to, like, we talk about it in terms of like introducing yourself to the inner child kind of thing.
Mm.
Instead of giving that inner child a bit of a hug and compassion, they'll try and throttle its neck and kill it if they could, give it a chance. So they self-hatred, basically is what I'm saying. Self-hatred, disgust, utter deep shame, on a level that we can't really appreciate in a sense.
Right.
As much as they might say they hate you and they hate everyone and all this stuff,
They hate themselves more.
that's enemy number one. Kill
Yeah.
the self, because I hate reality. I hate myself. The two are one of the same.
That's why we should round them up and put them in a fucking little imprisonment and let them fucking kill each other.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I mean,
yeah.
I say forget trying to argue with them.
Yeah, no, there's no point. They're not people. They're fucking... It's like somebody infected with rabies or an animal infected with rabies. What do? We put them down, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if we're not going to be kind and compassionate enough for these suffering individuals, at least put them somewhere where they can kill each other. Like,
well, you say they're not people. I mean,
yeah.
In a way, they kind of think they'd kind of agree with that sort of sentiment.
Yeah.
Maybe
they don't think they're people. They think they're fucking gods.
Exactly. And the way
It's like,
they've got such a distorted, polar opposite kind of way of going about things. Yeah. They cease to be. They kind of self-annihilate, and this is why these disorders are often described as self-destructive, because they destroy the self.
Yeah.
Well,
they need to be removed from regular society, though, because as they're destroying themselves, they destroy everyone around them. I think they spend more of their time trying to destroy other people because they're too cowardly to properly destroy themselves.
Yeah, because as much as they try to reject and destroy who they truly are,
right,
they can't quite do it. It's the shadow that follows them.
Right.
So, and if you've got other people in existence, it further kind of illustrates that it's like the emperor has no clothes on. So all of this rhetoric is trying to fool themselves into believing that this fantasy is actually true. And every twist and turn, the corner they go around, they're constantly banging into reality. Reminders are everywhere. You've got people telling them that they're full of shit. You've got reality saying you've got to grow up. You've got pressures of jobs around. You've got the societal structures, community structures. You've got everywhere you look, there's things telling you.
But there's not. I think there's more people enabling their bullshit and lying to them. That's the problem that I see. It's like more people lie to these people than tell them the truth. That's why they are able to continue rejecting reality en masse.
Yeah, that's a low supply, and that's all they. I mean, it does. Yeah, what you're saying is true. But what really makes them, they can never fully make this delusion real, because just by definition, it's not real. So no amount of trying to be delusional is going to really work. But having people co-sign enablers, you'll notice that is only a little buzz for them, only a little validation. Where they get their real validation is the combat, is when they fight something, when they can actually go toe to toe with reality. So they look for danger, they look for things to have clashes with.
But I've been offering combat to these feminists, and they don't want any part. Like, since I started my channel, I'm like, You guys want war? Come battle me. Like,
In a way, they are combating you. It's just in their own head, in their
they
own way, in their
fucking
terms.
run away, Billy. None of the feminists will actually talk to me,
That-
except the
power-
most stupidest one of all, which is Alice. Like,
Yeah, but the thing
It's-
is, to them, that's a power move because to win a battle is about control. So if they can deny your invitations or something like that, or ignore, or contain you, isolate you, ignore you, from their point of view, they've won.
okay, so in their upside down mind, where we're playing the opposite as true game, when they run away like little fucking cowards, they think they're winning.
Because she didn't get me. So if you didn't get me,
Oh, because I
then-
didn't destroy them, which would inevitably happen if we were to engage in combat.
well, that's a little bit of a feedback thing because in their head, in their world, they're invulnerable, they're invincible. So
Well, if that's true,
You-
prove it.
it's it is hard for them to. I mean, you can test them and catch them out with this nonsense, but it's pitiful, sort of rationalizing, where it'd be like, well, I can prove it by being cowardly, or I can prove it by
See,
like,
even being a master of feelings, you're having a hard time explaining the feelings based
Because-
rationality of their fucking idiocracy.
well, because the narcissism will is designed, it's built there to defend for this very situation. So by hook or by crook, it will find a way. Like, oh, she's set me up somehow. Like, so the victim card, and they'll fabricate some other things. Oh, she's had help to do this. That's why I'm not so great, or why she's appeared to defeat me. It's not because of my lack thereof. It's because I'm so dangerous to her. She's had to cheat and go below the belt, sort of thing. Yeah. So you see how, like, suddenly now, instead of being defeated fairly, they just refuse. Like, you can't beat someone who refuses to acknowledge they've been beaten.
Right.
They have to cooperate to an extent and come to an agreement with you. Well, that's already an impossibility. It's like an automatic rejection. So it's the conclusion before the start. It's the end before the beginning. So the end is like, no way is she gonna win. I'm the greatest. I'm gonna defend. I'm gonna come out on top. Whatever. Don't care what she does, what she says. I will twist it some way, somehow.
Right.
And even if I lose, I'm still, because these are their rules. You lose by default. You think that this is kind of like a game of chess where you can beat them, get them in checkmate, but it's their chessboard. They are by default already won the tournament. And
It's their checkers board.
and they
Let's
can
be
move
honest here.
They can move the pieces however they like, So just because you might have beat them fair and square,
Fucking
almost
Lawrence.
doesn't
Yeah, good morning, Lawrence. Yeah, no. See, that's still delusional thinking
matter. And
on
ultimately,
their part.
right. So, yeah, I mean, that's why.
I mean, for one, they're not playing chess. They're not even playing checkers.
No, they're playing their own game, and it's their own game inside their head. But they need someone to pretend to play with. And that's where you
Right.
come in.
Right.
So the rest of the world, the ones who are actually sane, like, we need to realize, hang on, like, we're not playing this game. and that's why they say walk out of the game. And the only way you can win it is by not playing it. And the thing is that you were never playing it in the first place.
Right.
This is all in their head. You don't
Yeah.
really exist anyway, because
Right.
this is part of that delusion.
Right.
I mean, but this is like a bit of a large. We went on a massive
I know.
detour from
Well,
just but
see, the enablers allow them to play their game in these institutions, in all of these institutions. I mean, just everywhere. People enable this shit.
yeah, I mean, on one hand,
Apparently, I heard like with somebody's country's garbage collection, there's group identity politics within that.
yeah, it's the thing is because there's no boundaries
Right.
are intentionally corroded to allow this kind of flexibility of invasion, to allow the fantasy to spread.
Yeah.
Like Contagion. You can't
Yes.
have Contagion if there are boundaries stopping it from happening.
Right. If people aren't courageous enough to say no.
Yeah, so you do see it seeping into the fibers or woven into the fabric of reality where it can. And
Oh yeah,
so
it's everywhere. Yeah, but Billy, it's everywhere. Fucking feminists work. I wonder how many feminists work at your local fucking garbage collecting.
well,
Like a feminist there thought it was a good idea to type up that bullshit.
it might have been like point of entry
Yes.
of the invasion, but if it carries on to eradicate reality, it needs to spread into every aspect where it's now into like rubbish collection, or there's some kind of
Yes.
political consideration just for, I don't know, opening your window or something because it's a sunny day or
Right.
whatever. And we see that kind of, especially in the UK, this government overreach in every facet of life, where you can, and particularly my gripe is with the driving thing. Where 1 minute they're telling you to reduce your speed, now it's 15-minute cities, now it's get a cheaper car, now you can't park your car anywhere, now you need a permit holder, now there are cameras everywhere, now it's going to be pay per mile, and it's rapid pace as well. Now there are no go zones. You can't go to the city on the weekend. It's like, how many times are you changing it? It's never satisfied, and it can also never. It will. That's part of the.
It can never be satisfied.
There is no conclusion.
Right. It's making changes for the sake of change.
Yeah, it's partly that, but also making changes so that it keeps reality at bay. It prevents reality from reasserting and gaining control back.
Right.
Because if you could change some rules, you can make some protocols, fine, okay. Society and people can adapt. They might not like it, but they can adapt. But the thing is, as soon as they start to adapt, then they're able to exist in a so-called reality as such, and get by. Now we've got a problem again.
Yeah.
So this fantasy requires dysfunctional people as its population.
Yes.
And this is what
that's how it's spread.
This is what the elites don't realize. They think people are, like I was saying before, fantasy requires reality to keep things in balance. Well, the elites think that if they can disrupt people's lives so much that they can't live and function in reality, then they will be forced to participate in this fantasy beneath them. That's not the case. What will happen is they'll go to this fantasy, yes, but they're going to be as disordered as the elites are. So they're going to start breaking laws. They're going to start thinking that they're number one.
What do you mean by elite, though? Let's define that term, because whenever I hear that, I hear feminists in positions of power and influence. When I hear elite, I hear university professor
Yeah, I mean, I used it.
Indoctrinator. That's a fucking crazy lesbian bitch.
I said
That's
it a
what
bit
I hear.
carelessly, but it's because I don't have these. The I'm getting a bit exhausted, so it's like, fuck it. What do I call them? I don't know. I just call them elites. Yeah, because some people will say, oh, the oligarchs, the royal family or something, and you know, there's all this kind of the bloodline.
When I hear elite, I think Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary fucking Clinton.
Yeah,
Hillary.
I mean,
That's what I think of when I hear elite.
It doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't. I mean, I'm thinking of like the city of mayor or the prime minister and stuff like that. But in a way, it won't really. It'll be erroneous because when all are deluded just as bad as they are, then we can all be unicorns in a way. We will all be the elite. You know, when all are one in this one universe, one identity type thing, then how can you have? You can't have the. This is another problem that they go through, where they try to be the master,
right,
and the slave simultaneously. You can't do it. Now we can't all be masters and we can't all be slaves. It just won't function like that. So there needs to be a delegation, and and switching around isn't really going to work very well.
Right.
But
Sam says there's nothing elite about them. They're physically and mentally, as well as spiritually and emotionally weak. That is true. But why? And that is the perception of these people. That's why they're coddled. That's why they aren't held accountable for their fucking crimes against humanity.
No, yeah, I agree with both of you there. Like, because, and this is why, like narcissists are terrible parents.
An elite of victimhood. Yes, narcissists are terrible parents.
because you don't have responsibility. You don't have
right,
all the things that you would need, really, compassion, empathy, and all this other stuff to help you.
Yeah.
And so as a result, just how like narcissists are really weak and cowardly. You see those same behaviors in the political leaders.
Yes.
They're on a fragile knife edge themselves. They're not really that different. And in some ways, they're in an even more precarious position because once they get caught out and exposed, it's a lot harder for them to just hide underneath the rock.
Right.
You know, at least with the crazy bitches you're dealing with, if you expose them, they just go on radio silence for a bit. They ain't really being
the smart ones. The fucking retardedest one of the bunch has.
But it's not in the tabloids all over the press sort of thing, and they're being spotted in the street and whatever. You know, if you compare that to like someone like Amber Heard, her future going forward is going to be a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
But they're not really that far apart, really.
Right.
You know, so this is another reason why it's called fragile narcissism. But vulnerable, fragile, weak, etc. And for the most part, it's that the art of it's the con man trick, the art, the performer of making you believe, lying to you, so that I can lie to myself and be like, oh, I am indeed an elite or whatever. I do actually, I am competent, when really you're a buffoon.
Right.
It doesn't matter. The truth doesn't really matter. What matters is the appearance. So as long as I can appear as though I'm a lion, but when really I'm a little pussycat, it doesn't really matter. You know, I get away with it. I can fool people. I can fool myself. So for all intents and purposes, I may as well be a lion. You know, but then it doesn't really. It's not compatible or congruent with reality. Because when a real lion comes along, it gets devoured. You know, so kids like to. You know, kids may like to put on their parents' clothes and play grown-ups. Doesn't mean they are.
Right.
And as such, so we've got leaders that are irresponsible, they're weak, they're cowardly. There's not really much holding them up, apart from so far successfully being able to bluff it. You know, and I mean, it's kind of amazing how they've managed to get this far,
Well,
But-
they do have a good amount of actual believers in their bluff, which is strange because I didn't even know these people existed. I definitely didn't know these people existed on in the men's side of the fucking arena. I mean, just because like with my profession, and all the women that I would see that were ideologically infected, like these feminists, and to hear them say the things like the mainstream media talking points but I've been hearing men say the same fucking thing, and I'm like, how are you actually a believer in these things? Like, I don't get it.
there's a
Like
few
like this is new territory for me, Billy.
Well, you so I can explain this with the narcissist research that's
Okay.
out there, sort of thing. There's a few
Yeah.
factors. One, in normal, decent, healthy human behavior, we tend to give people the benefit of doubt, of the doubt. So we don't
Right.
we don't go into a situation assuming that we're being manipulated.
Right.
You know, we take people at a kind of face value and have a little bit. Maybe we're a little bit naive here, and slowly the world is becoming more distrusting. But
Yeah.
traditionally, you're in a community. When you say hi to your neighbor or something like that for the first time, I just
Yeah.
moved into the area. This is my neighbor. Hello, my name is so and so. You don't think to yourself, I'm introducing myself to a serial killer. You know, you're just thinking this is a neighbor.
Right.
Whatever. You kind of stereotype them a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, you know, you start off on a good footing.
Right.
That's one aspect. So we try, as it's in our nature, at least traditionally, originally, or whatever, to think better of people,
Yeah.
rather than to treat them with suspicion from day one. And there's more reasoning behind that if you're interested, like, because you know, if you're going around with a suspicious mind all the time, that's not exactly a very healthy person.
Super skeptical always.
Right. So if you could be trusting of others, it shows that you're trusting of yourself. It shows that you have a sense of security, you know, because
Yeah.
you can trust who you are, you can trust your surroundings, your environment, and so you can trust your interactions, and you can trust that the other person isn't really out to get you.
I trust people will do what people are going to do.
But,
And I'm ready for all the outcomes.
Yeah. So there is, yeah. I mean, overly trusting is also a problem. But
Yeah.
so I'm using this kind of as a loose description. We're trying to talk about how they get away, how they came to manage to get this far successfully. So
I just need to know why male feminism is a thing, and how a man can be so fucking Trump deranged that it totally clouds their fucking judgment. I don't get it. Because male feminism and Trump derangement syndrome are like hand in hand.
yeah. So
And I don't get it.
the shortest answer I could probably give you is because there's a lack of sense of self, or something like that, or it's a fractured sense of self, or a damaged sense of self.
Yeah.
It's problems with the I. You know, who am I? What am I?
Yeah.
And how do I feel about I? And what do I think about I? Logic and emotions, and what do I identify as? So a sense of self, which ties in esteem, self identity, esteem, and that opens up the path to other things like, you know, sense of worth, and then your integrity, confidence, putting yourself forwards, faith in yourself, trust in yourself. These are like after effects. You can't do any, when people talk about self-love, you can't do any self-love healing and recovery. You can't do any of that unless you've got some crumb of a self-esteem to give a damn about yourself, you know. because otherwise, why would you bother? So there needs to be something there, a seed in which, as a flower, you would grow.
You know what I just thought of? And this is exactly what the feminists say.
Is it? Oh,
Oh, well, no. Like when I hear one of the, one of the guys talk about like Trump in a bad light, like one recently said something about, oh, he'll never be president because he's going to be a felon because of all this indictment shit. And my initial thought was, oh, like, why do you hate yourself? Because fundamentally, and that's what the fucking feminists say about men who are combating them, who are trying to bring, or you hate women, or
well, who hurt you?
who hurt you. It's this fucking same.
Yeah, a lot of it becomes projection, mirror.
Yeah. But how is that different from me? I mean, because that's what I just thought of. Somebody being Trump deranged. It's like, why? If they don't have a sense of self and they don't like themselves and there's no self-love, like that leads down to, why do you hate yourself? Like, it's the same fucking argument though the feminists put out there. So are they wrong?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the comparison.
They're right, but it's just misplaced. Going back to what I always say, it's like, I like this crazy bitch. They're saying all the great things, but their target is off.
Maybe this might not be helpful, so feel free to cut me off if it's just too wrong or whatever. But we don't like to think that we would like to think we're very different to them.
Right.
But it seems that we're not actually that different. It's just probably like childhood. Life is like a fine line, a rope to walk along, a knife's edge.
Yeah.
You can fall either side of it. And it doesn't take much to make that kind of to fall. They fell one way, and hopefully we try and stay on the straight and narrow.
Right.
But we're not really that miles apart. So no, that's not really the best of analogies. What I'm trying to say is that because they don't create their own world, they hijack already existing reality.
Mm-hmm.
They corrupt it, they circumvent it, they mutate it, they re-augmentate it. So there are very similar things. Like when we say like self-love, for example, the narcissist could turn around and be like, oh yeah, I know all about self-love. I'm full of it. And it's like, well, yeah, you are. That's the problem. You directed your self-love to your ego. We're talking about directing it to your true self.
Right. The target's off.
We're both on the same page when we talk about self-love, but they misconstrued it. They reinterpretate it because they can't take things, because to take things as it's supposed to be meant is to take reality. This is what we meant. This is the essence of the lesson or whatever. So automatic rejection again.
Right.
Even if it would benefit them, they would reject it still because they can't accept anything that has a resemblance of reality.
Right.
So they've got to mutate it or misconstrue it in some sort of shape or form. And so they go, this is what I'll do with it. And that's another way they could get by so easily, mimicking, is because at superficial surface level, it doesn't seem like they're doing anything wrong.
Right.
But underneath, when you go deeper, you realize that the driving force, the motivations, what they're up to, the secret agenda is actually taking place. It's like a subterranean world almost, and they've got going on.
That's why when we used to dissect and stuff like Universal Mother, and like even listening to Lazarus's psychological breakdowns of stuff, I'm like, yes, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. And then there comes a point where it's like, oh, but your target's off. It's like you're right about all of this shit.
Yeah.
But your target's way the fuck off. Like
Yeah.
like when he was breaking down all the shit where he was trying to blame me for it, I'm like, no, that's Elspeth, that's Alice, that's all these crazy bitches. Why is it being scapegoated onto me? Like, you're right about all this shit, but you're wrong about the target.
Yeah.
It's weird.
That kind of helps explain why that takes place, because
Yeah.
in the beginning, it's the wolf in sheep's clothing. They masquerade, they hide, they've got the chameleon thing going, their camouflage or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're able to infiltrate. That's like step one.
Right.
You don't have awareness that this is taking place, so you think brother, sister, or whatever. There's nothing there. They're normal. You give them the
Right.
okay. They passed the purity test.
Right.
And at some point, sometimes I've said this before in the past, that's why giving someone time is a good way of shit testing them in a way, because the manipulator will have to manipulate, will have to show their hand at some point.
They'll have to pop their head up.
Right.
The ones behind the scenes.
They can't, as much, it's just a waiting game, really.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll turn around and say, oh, I'm a unicorn, or oh, I've got an IQ of blah blah blah, or
145.
And you'll notice when they make these proclamations, it's an insistence. It's just out of nowhere. No one asked you what if you're a vegan or if you're a meat eater. You just felt compelled to tell me. Well, they had to. It's part of it's self-assertion. So it's a component. Not only do they have to reject as a essential necessity that will take place, it's the mechanism that allows the fantasy to exist, but there's also this necessity of having to insist that they are something they are not.
Right.
Because no one's gonna mind read and just say to them, oh, you're a unicorn. And it's like, oh, thank goodness you said that, because that's what I was thinking. I knew that all along. It's like, no. So they have to bring into existence their imagination, and the only way they can do that is to project it verbally, say it out, like, I am a uber duper top alpha male or something like that.
Super galactic empath.
or super galactic empath or whatever. And then you'll see another trait there where someone else may put their hand up and be like, oh, you too, just like me. Now they've got a problem because there's two of them.
Right.
Galactic empaths. So it's the battle of the empath. Well, my empath kung fu is higher than yours. Right.
It's like that's why we see all these infighting in every single one of these group identities. It's like there's almost an unhealthy form of competition, and that goes back to what I see at work.
Fantasies.
Yeah, I see that at work too. It's like all these departments are almost warring against each other, and it's unhealthy competition. And it's like in an organization where you're supposed to all be on the same team. It's like there's a form of, which I don't quite know how to alleviate that affliction as of yet. I mean, I'm doing my best to try to bring them all together and make sure they realize that your personal fucking problems with each other don't have any bearing on the job I'm gonna do.
Well, the job is just the arena. Your work environment, it's just the stadium for which this battle takes place. In a way, it's kind of irrelevant. It's just the platform for this exchange of fuel and energy to take place, to happen.
Right.
And ultimately, it comes down to self-annihilation, because those who aren't competitive will just Miranda in life, in a way, not to be too demeaning, but like they'll just mind their own business and self-improve and develop and be blasé, not really aware that they're having to compete with anyone other than themselves, you know, and that's cool, and it works for them.
Yeah.
Now, this is surviving in life. This is getting by in life. They can't, the other side, the feminists or whatever, or
Yeah.
delusional people, they can't do that. So how do they survive? It's by, well, if I step on you as a stepping stone and I push you down, by default, I must be victorious.
Right.
So that's another reason why there's kind of like stunted growth, and they're really
Yeah.
they're not skilled in the slightest.
Yeah.
They're not capable or competent at all.
Yeah.
It's not really about being competent. It's about stopping you from being competent. It's about stopping you from outperforming me or basically
Right.
existing. So if I can't beat anyone in competition and survive this game of life,
Right.
you know, then everyone else must die so that I am left victorious. Yeah.
See, and I've seen that in leadership, and I'm like, I don't get it. I personally don't get it, because in my mind, coming from a small business arena, entrepreneurial fucking background, and self-employment, I'm like, that doesn't seem to me to
No, well, that's
to inspire the greatest wins. Like, as a leader, you should be building up these people to.
That's all right. Where's Contriver? Get Contriver here. That's winning the competition of being the top bottom bitch of a bottom bitch. And that's why
Right?
because if this is how they go about their business or their entrepreneurial adventure or life in general,
It would never work
the
in the
winner
private
loses.
sector. Yeah.
you know,
It would never work in the private sector.
no, and that's why most normal people don't look at it in that kind of competitive sort of way. It's
Right.
about if when you build your business or your
Yeah.
empire,
Yeah.
that's what you should be focusing on: building your business and empire, investing in it, putting
Right.
resources and energy. You don't spend time trying to just eradicate the competition around you, because
Right.
what have you done? You've got nothing to
Right.
show for.
Right.
Look at me, everybody. I've got nothing. Whereas like, well, there's no one around to even see this proud mountain of nothing you've got
Right.
built. You know,
Yeah.
had you done the work and just not bothered being so conquering the universe megalomaniac of you, then maybe you'd have something to show for, you know.
Rusty. Good to see you.
Salute, Rusty, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Rusty.
So that's kind of that's what sort of it sounds like. That's the sort of thing that's taking place. So
Oh yeah, it's
trying
fucking weird. It's like
Well,
you're a member of an organization. You have your place in this entity, and you have a fucking job to do to keep everything running smoothly. Why would you sabotage other departments to try to make yours fucking look better? I don't get it. Like, to me, that's crazy bitchery.
It is, but it's the appearance as well. So you have to kind of remember that. It's like it's not about the practicalities or what's actually good. It's
Right.
about fooling yourself and fooling those around you. And that's another
Right.
reason why they can say, hey, everybody, all the departments or all these social community networks or even people or whatever, hey, let's all work together and hold hands and clap for the NHS and sunshine and rainbows, everybody. So it's that what we were discussing moments before about the infiltration or the like the sugar wrapping, the candy wrapping that disguises the true intent. So it's like
Right.
it's a half truth. It's like, yes, they can say that, like, let's do this for the greater good. Now you're thinking this is a greater good for society or for the company, but they're thinking this is for the greater good of me.
Right. Which I am vehemently, I think,
Now,
allergic to.
Now, unless you pick up on that kind of meta communication or between the lines,
Yeah.
a naive person will be on board and be like, yes, I am with
Right.
you. We will work together for the greater good, not realizing they're actually signing a deal with the devil.
Right. Right. Yeah, Rusty knows exactly what I'm dealing with. I went into, well, you know too. I kind of informed him, like, big picture, what my goal is, and he's seen similar in his area with the same fucking company. Like it's not just a this location problem; it's a societal fucking problem.
Yeah, and it's not just you'll see it in every kind of institution, even like a the house would be susceptible to it.
Right.
And that's the terrifying aspect of just how bad things are getting.
Right. Right.
Without intervention,
Yes.
no stopping it.
I'm the intervention, and I know Frank thinks it's a big task. It is a big fucking task, and it takes every day saying no to the bullshit, and like, no, do this instead. Do this instead. It's like unfucking the place. I mean, getting rid of the crazy bitches is just one of the steps. It's like,
well, I think a more important step is to disseminate the information to make people more aware, because then they can take action instead of sitting by complicit.
Yeah.
There's no good you taking down the system in your local area, and maybe you make it into a wonderful place afterwards, but that's not going to do anything really. It's isolated.
Right.
So in a way, and this is where we are not that much different from them. For us to to fight back against this fantasy invasion, we kind of got to use some of their tactics to an extent, just not with. I mean this in the sense of as much as they disperse themselves into the fabrics of reality.
Oh yeah.
Truth into the fabric of reality.
Exactly.
It's like dare I say it? It's like dispensing the vaccination.
Yes. That's
mind virus.
That's why I go everywhere. That's why I'm able to go everywhere.
You have to bring immunity to the community and society, and then that has herd immunity where it spreads.
I know.
On its own, under its own kind of power and things like that.
Yeah.
So it backs up what MGTOW, for example, says about the importance of reaching out to men and teaching, opening their eyes up and making them aware, and not to, because they'll try and say you're grooming young men, but it's teaching them life skills. It's teaching them as a figure, so that
I think. Hold on, Billy. I think what we're talking about is different than what MGTOW, because MGTOW doesn't recruit; they just wait for people to show up. Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm actually going out and trying to recruit for the anti-crazy bitch campaign. So I need to recruit personally.
And this isn't like limited. It's as a generalization. It's just basically we need to better educate ourselves as a civilization.
Right.
With the tools and awareness to understand what is taking place. I'm just saying, like MGTOW, like Red Pill could also be in that kind of category, because those kind of two groups seem to be the main ones who are bringing this sort of insight forwards, because they're needing to, because everyone, like the rest of the society, are either unaware, they're complicit, they're avoidant or something like that. They're co-signing on it. Because when it comes to like the blue pill, for example, they will keep the delusion going until it is no longer sustainable. Only then would they ever think about taking the red pill and applying you're not going to apply critical logic, critical thinking, unless you kind of have to. If you can get away living in La La Land, where everything is sunshine and rainbows and bliss, you would.
Right. Right.
Why would anyone? You'd be kind of crazy not to.
Right.
So it's when the fantasy is no longer functionable, do you have to start thinking now and being like, what on earth is going on? That's when you start
Yeah.
questioning things in life, you know. And that's when you start having the epiphanies and the truth pill, if there's such a thing, or whatever, you know, or the spoon of medicine reality, or some metaphor. And it's important that kind of for things to change and to improve, and it's happening, you know.
Right.
Because it's either you do that, it's either, and that's why MGTOW doesn't need to recruit, or any real like critical thinking philosophy doesn't need to recruit.
Right.
Quite often they'll say, you know, they come to us.
Yeah. Well, that's
No,
that's kind
we
of
don't give you red pills. You find the red pill.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's because of need, because of it wasn't by accident, you know.
Right.
It's because you need a way of making sense of the collapsing world around you. The fantasy is not sustainable; it's collapsing. The
Mhm.
cracks are beginning to appear in this paradise of a bubble, and it's either you sink into your delusion and deny,
Mhm.
or you wake up,
Mhm.
you know. So that's basically the only sort of two choices you've got. It's either you pretend to be naive. It's like, all right, you're entitled to do so, but
Yeah.
how far are you going to go with that? You know, you're entering more and more delusional psychosis. You're absolutely off your rocker now. You know,
Right.
you might be locked up in an institute for the rest of your life. If that's what you want, fine, whatever. Or you can't be this Peter Pan, a child forever. You know. And if
Well,
everyone is like that,
yeah.
then they'll be even less able to have sustainability, because we can't all be dependents needing to be looked after. Who the hell is going to look after you? You know.
Right. Well, so what advice or what can I do, Billy? I mean, you know my personality pretty well. Is there anything that I can do to maybe, because I feel like my patience is running thin with the cowardice. Is there anything I could do personally that
Well, by
would
all means, with your work environment, by all means, like if there are managerial positions or even colleagues who are receptive to information, who are willing to face some truths, and you can expound upon it and elaborate and explain it to, you know, to give them a better,
yeah.
then do so. You know,
Yeah.
no reason
It's
why.
just I think I need more discipline when in the face of the fuckery.
Yeah.
Like if something happens, I feel like I'm not very good at hiding my repulsion to such fuckery. Is there something I can I can do to mask my disgust?
um,
Or maybe it would
there
help
are
me
things,
have more compassion for the cowards? Because I'm finding it very hard to
it's well, so it's a separate stream, really, to be honest, because
Oh great.
the
That's what this stream was all about to
the
begin
guide I would
with.
say would be like, right, fly through the grieving process as quick as you can with these people, so that you can get to a point of letting them go and accepting that, you know, they got to do the changes for themselves and you can't do it for them. So
Yeah.
you got to disconnect, and fingers crossed is what you're sort of hoping with them. But as a statement to motivate not engaging with parasitical people in such a way,
Mhm.
especially if it's like a combative style a tit for tat is the argument of like, if don't be keep your own things like grandiosity in check. Don't think that just because you've got the truth pill or these tools that you somehow defeat them at their own game. The moment you even entertain the idea is the moment you've already lost, really. Yeah. So that basically puts an end to all this interaction back and forth with them. You're not going to
I
beat
mean,
them.
I said something out loud and I couldn't stop myself. One of these white knights or whatever who was literally doing so much enabling, and it was so disgusting. I couldn't help myself. And mind you, this is a married man simping, so to speak. And I made a comment like, "Oh, do you need a leash?" And I couldn't stop myself. And I thought I might have offended him, and he said it didn't offend him. He doesn't seem to have a problem with
Humor is actually quite a good defense if you need to, and not just a defense, but it, because it's like here's little princess playing grown up, wearing her mummy's shoes or something like that, and thinks she's a queen. She's got the
right.
You come along and it's like, kind of like ridicule in a way.
I did. I ridiculed one of the white knights in front of her.
So what does that communicate? It means that your little dream, fantasy, la la, and make believe is laughable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for them, they don't like that because they've spent a lot of time trying to create this delusion. World building ain't easy, So, and then here comes you to say that, haha, you made yourself a circus.
Yeah.
No, it's a castle. Okay.
I did tell her too. You should thank this man, because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't be able to even do your fucking job.
Yeah.
It totally went over her head. Strangely. Went over her head.
Well, that's a double.
Wow, she's
you said two
retarded.
things to her, though, at least. One that she should be grateful. Maybe that's what's over her head. She can't understand. Why would I be grateful? He's supposed to do that for me.
Oh, maybe.
I'm entitled to it. I shouldn't be grateful. I'm the master.
Maybe.
Right? And then the other one is that because you're probably preoccupied with that thinking, didn't realize you're also insinuating that you're incompetent, and without this other person to do this for you, you'd be in wherever it is. And
yeah, she just literally changed the subject into what he was going to buy her for dinner, which was strange. That's when I had to shut my mouth.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
Well, you're already exercising another. You said
restraint.
Before, yeah, like maybe you need to be a bit more disciplined. So know how far to go with things.
Yeah.
Like when basically you're wasting your time, or when, or knowing. See, it could come from this idea of perfectionism, thinking that we need to have an ironclad argument and we need to have every point made and all this.
Well, I feel like if I would have opened my mouth, it would have been more degrading and shaming to him than her at this point.
There comes a place and time, as much as we might tell them to shut their fucking mouth.
Yeah.
We can't. We need to listen to our own advice and know when we need to shut our fucking mouth.
Yeah.
Sometimes your silence speaks more words than actually said.
Okay, I'll work on being more silent.
Work on giving them the Paddington. Who knows Paddington Bear? The hard stare. Work on that.
Oh, I'm bad at that though.
The death daggers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been helpful, Billy. It's given me lots to think about.
We haven't even spoken about helplessness, really. We've just been talking about the cowardly.
I know.
mess that
Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 later.
maybe because
Or unless you want to go into a monologue about that, do you have time?
no,
Will I?
no,
Okay.
no, it'll have to be another time.
Okay.
Because, but as a teaser trailer or whatever for part 2,
Yeah.
because as much as we've discussed here about cowardness, I think learned helplessness, I'll describe that as dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I tend to, when I'm looking at this whole landscape, I tend to have more compassion for the oppressed, the ones that have been abused into submission. I feel like I have more compassion for those people because I don't want to like be mean to them and further abuse them because they've been abused, right? They're being held hostage in some aspect.
Yeah.
They've been
They've got to fight that
conditioned. Yeah. They've almost had the fight beat out of them.
Yeah.
It's like the elephant that had their leg chained to the fucking pole its whole fucking life. You let the chain go, or you just change it out
No,
for a
it's-
rope. It's like
yeah.
they don't know that they could just pull out of that situation.
Yeah, and it's very compassionate of you saying that, because it does show you like the emotional torture, turmoil
Yeah,
that's inside them,
I know.
and that is excruciating agony, distressful.
Yeah.
So it's not a way of living. As much as they might think this is how to get by in life, it's not really a way of living.
And I see it, and it makes me sad for them.
Yeah, because
Which then in turn makes me angry towards the crazy bitches who are doing the oppressing, and then makes me want to start collecting heads.
they're taking advantage of them, definitely.
Oh yes,
Making the situation worse.
they do,
They need to do it.
and they
but
think it's okay.
That internal turmoil was already present before these crazy bitches arrived. It just
I know.
before they could have maybe rectified it, but with the influence of the crazy bitches,
Right.
they become disabled from it.
Yeah.
So yeah, a very heavy emotional aspect to factor in, to embed with this entire conversation,
Yeah.
and why it's so difficult to have a realistic, accurate depiction of what reality is, because they're not in reality. That's
Right.
the thing.
I know.
Their emotional landscape is kind of like a fantasy in a way. It's
And I
another
don't
type-
understand emotional landscapes. That's why I was hoping you could maybe draw me a map. Because I don't fucking get it, Billy. I
get the
don't
crayon.
understand it.
It is. Imagine it like a storm, like a hurricane, a tornado, or something like that. It's like a whirlwind. It's chaotic. It's a lot of energy. Like how much energy is in a tornado? A lot of
Yeah.
energy. Yeah. And it's destructive, and all this sort of stuff. So that's why it's not an easy thing to deal with. And a lot with tornadoes is you let them pass in a way. You can't really stop a tornado. So these emotions, as much as you might tell someone like get a grip of your feelings, or get a grip of your emotions and stop letting it run away with you, they are almost powerless to stop it. That's not true.
But again, just like the victims see these predators as these big bad things, they give
Jesus.
them more grandiose credence or whatever, even
Good
though they're
power.
these small cowardly things. That's the same way I look at these fucking emotions. I'm like, they don't have to have control over you.
Not when you look at it, once you start being logical and critically thinking about it, but
Right.
where they are currently, it is this chaotic monster of a bigger than life, because it's bigger than their life, because they don't think much of their own life or who they are. They're like this tiny. They think of themselves as this tiny, insignificant little pebble up against Samson versus Goliath. This is the kind of narration that's running in their head. And without proper intervention, guidance, and all this therapy and counseling, there's nothing to really prevent it. They would rather feed into their energy into this storm and make the storm even bigger,
Right.
so that then they can kind of say that they were right, that
Right.
their perception of reality is correct, because look
Right.
how big this dragon is now. But
Right.
they don't realize that is that they've magnified it. They've empowered. You empower the narcissist. It's the emperor who has no clothes on. It's bluffing in poker. It's all this con artistry. You
Yeah.
know, smoke and mirrors,
Right.
magicians, magic tricks. It's
Right.
not real.
It's not real.
You bring these problems into existence with your imagination running wild.
Yeah.
But as a comparison contrast with the topic of learned helplessness, that one is more of a logical failure. So you could be a little bit less sympathetic with them, if you like.
Okay. Okay. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
I'll work on that. Maybe that's something I need to work on.
These are long conversations, and they cover a lot of ground. They're big, so
back to me blaming the enablers. Like, am I enabling the cowardice? It's like, where do I draw the line between misandry, and especially when people are so fucking sensitive and they take things out of context.
blame. So easy versus hard again.
Yeah.
It's easy to blame someone.
Right.
So if that's the one option, so what's the hard thing to do? Well, you can start by thinking that sometimes blame is not necessary. It doesn't matter whose fault it is or how it happened. What matters is, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. Now.
Yeah. If we're too busy focusing on blaming someone, we'll never really have a solution. We can't change the past.
Right.
We can't rectify the past. But what we can do is acknowledge in the present and proceed towards the future. So what can we do?
What
kind of
like fresh start. Yeah.
Kind of either a fresh start or
start
whatever.
over.
You know, because if you don't do that, then what happens? A cycle. You just bring the past of blame and guilt and all this sort of bad stuff, and you just repeat it going forward into the future.
Okay, so let's make a commitment that fresh start. So every time somebody brings up one of these past shit, I'll be like, I don't give a fuck. It doesn't exist here in the now. Like, forget it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It depends. I mean, you have to exercise a bit of sort of like mature diligence or discretion.
Yeah.
There might be some instances where in the past does sort of, okay, fine, we can bear that in mind. We might not necessarily blame you and say that's the reason, but we can say, you're the one that's the culprit here. So it's going to have to be your actions leading this change or something like that. You know, so there's no set formula. There's no easy kind of proceed straightforward, Eins Wein, and all is fine.
Right.
And you know, you have to also factor in, like, sometimes maybe mistakes might be made.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to have a part 2 about this.
One of the big questions that those people will need to ask, and maybe you as well, will be like, to what extent is it worth doing? Or how much investment how much work are you willing to put in? Like,
all the work.
Like healing and recovery, you know, they'll always say, like, it all depends on the patient or the client. If they're not willing to put in any work, forget it. You know, so how much can they heal? It's down to the client. Like, how much do they want to heal? Do they just want to be able to get by? Do they want to be functionable, or do they want to actually be something more than that? You know, do they want to be thriving, as they may say?
Yeah.
One thing to survive is another thing to thrive, prosper, or whatever.
Well, they better Yeah, they better get on board because I'm willing to do all the work to dismantle the tyrannical matriarchy. So they better heal or get the fuck out of my way.
And at some point, like, you don't want a situation where you do all the work, and instead of them being dependent on their abuser, like Stockholm syndrome, now they're just dependent on you to mummy them and pick up their, their slack or whatever, at the cost of your life. And you're not really, like, were you employed to fix their mess, right? Or was that the basis of all this sort of thing, like that you'll always be there as a janitor?
No.
No offense to janitors out there, obviously, you do tremendous work.
Yeah.
Like, if we're supposed to be trying to encourage people to stand on their own 2 feet under their own steam of energy, to be independent and individualistic and all this sort of great stuff, then at some point the ball is in their hand and it's up to them what to do with it. And we can't be outcome dependent either. We can't be angry with them once they decide to, like once your kid decides to stop being a child and live their own life.
Yeah.
That's their life. It's not your life. It's up to them what they do with it. If they decide to be a criminal and get into trouble, you might not be happy, obviously, but in a way, it's kind of like you have to respect their decision and the choices they make. And these will be lessons for them to learn. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Billy. Yes, we need a round 2, part 2.
Having me on. It's been a while. Feels like being on a stream with you.
I know, right? Been busy dismantling the tyrannical matriarchy within one corporation.
Yeah, and
there's been some. Yeah.
I didn't realize it would open up so much. The wound goes deep. So,
the cowardice wound.
Yeah, I suppose. So yeah, okay. So thank you again. If people in the chat are following.
Yeah, let's say hi, Rusty. Good to see you, Rusty. Sam Fisher, Frank. Who else is here? I don't think anybody else. JR was here. Mexican Muscle.
I saw Frank. Well, I was talking to Frank earlier. Yeah, I got your email, sir. And if you ever want to talk, it'd be my pleasure. And anytime.
All right. Well, let's call it. Say bye to everybody.
Bye. Take care. See you soon.
To be continued with round 2.